I'm sorry, please forgive me. Those are some of the hardest words we ever have to say. And even though we know we need to be forgiven, and even though we really mean them, saying these words seems to be incredibly hard. Especially if we're expecting, or if we've happened to meet very often, a lot of barriers from the other person. If we expect to be met with contempt, or pain, or anger, asking for forgiveness becomes very difficult. And more than that, we learn very early in our lives that saying I'm sorry is often not enough. So what does it take? What skills do we need to learn in order to be able to ask for forgiveness graciously? In order to be able to have good manners of apologizing? It is a skill. Actually, it is a set of skills, and it takes good practice. Of course, it takes more than practice, and it takes more than the right words. But that's another story. It comes down to what we believe about ourselves and our self-esteem. It comes down on the things that we believe are important, the relationships that we believe are important. It comes down to guilt and shame and all those negative emotions that we've been instilled with since childhood, especially when they are connected to forgiveness. But as I said, that's another story. If you're in the point where you know you need to be forgiven, if you've already decided to ask for forgiveness, but you find it incredibly difficult, if you've already tried and you've discovered that it didn't yield the results you were expecting, and if you really, really want to repair the relationship, then you need to look for some examples of good practice. You need to search those little skills, those behaviors, those abilities that will help you be better at asking for forgiveness. Because let's be honest, it's not going to happen just one time. It's a skill we need to practice quite often. So, what does it take to be able to ask for forgiveness in a gracious, elegant, dignified and open and honest manner? First of all, asking for forgiveness is not a one-time event. It's not a brief, short-timed, a moment. It's not a punctual event. It's a process. It takes time. It's something you not only need to think about, but you also need to offer the other time to think about. Asking for forgiveness begins when you realize that something is wrong, that something you said or did hurt the other person, and you are willing and open to do and take the steps and do what it takes and to put in effort and time and a part of yourself in order to make things heal. Because you have to be honest to yourself and to the other. After we've hurt each other, we cannot go back to the people we were before. Everything that happens, everything we do, changes us. So, the aim in asking for forgiveness is not going back to the way we were. That's not possible. The aim in asking for forgiveness is to start healing. To start healing as a person, to start healing the relationship. To advance towards a different balance, a different relationship. It's about growth, it's about better understanding, it's about changing. So when you realize it takes time, that means that you will come into the process with a set of expectations that are more realistic than I just want to be forgiven and get it over with. It means that you will open yourself to the stress and the pressure of not knowing whether you'll be forgiven or not. It's about becoming vulnerable and tolerating that vulnerability. And that is a skill that takes practice, and it's not something comfortable. We are never going to enjoy asking for forgiveness. That's not the point. The point is to do whatever it takes to mend fences, to start healing, and to change for the better. It starts, of course, with expressing your attitude the right way. It starts with saying, I'm sorry, I deeply regret what happened. I understand that I've hurt you, and I apologize for that. But as you know, that's not enough. It's not enough to say I'm sorry and then to expect that everything will magically disappear. It's not enough to wait for the other to say I forgive you. Being able to apologize, to ask for forgiveness in a good manner, in a healthy manner, means that you will need to ask for the other person to tell the story. It is extremely important to offer the other, the hurt party, the chance to express the emotions, to tell the story, to get everything that has been so painful out in the open, in the space between the two of you. And that means that you will get in a point where you will need to practice and to make good use of your empathy. When you begin to understand what the other has been feeling, a lot of the misunderstandings will get cleared. But you will also be able to understand what the impact of your own actions and words has been. And that is a step forward towards responsibility and towards healing yourself. You cannot go through the process of being forgiven until you do not understand what you're being forgiven for. Because while we ask for forgiveness, quite often what we mean is, please stop being upset with me, let's get this over with, I don't want to feel the pain, I don't want to feel the guilt, I don't want to feel the shame, I just want it all to go away. But that's not a magical solution for feeling better. Forgiveness is a healing process that comes with a certain degree of being uncomfortable, of being frustrated, of being in pain. And that is a part of the good manners of forgiving. So while the other tells their story, you listen. That's good manners. But that's also an excellent way of meeting the other person halfway, of connecting to their pain, of understanding what you are apologizing for. Because one of the key good manners of asking for forgiveness is being extremely specific. It's not enough to say, I'm sorry I've hurt you. You need to be able to be very specific while asking for forgiveness. You need to be able to ask for forgiveness for each and every one of your actions that hurt the other person. Don't just say, I'm sorry I've hurt you. Say, I'm sorry I left and you felt alone about it. I'm sorry I said all those hurtful words. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. I'm sorry I took away something from you. I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I didn't come back. I'm sorry I didn't call. Every little thing that needs to be forgiven needs to be put out in the open. But there's a trick. There's a trap here. While being very specific in asking for forgiveness, while naming all those behaviors and attitudes and words that need to be forgiven, it's very easy to slip on one or other side of the balance. You can either become passive-aggressive and while asking for forgiveness bring actually veiled accusations, like saying, I'm sorry you felt hurt, or I'm sorry you overreacted, or you can become very self-destructive and say, I'm sorry I'm such a bitch, I'm sorry I am such a mean person, and so on. And that is not helpful. Both those attitudes are harmful on the long way. So while being specific, you need to ask forgiveness for behaviors and still maintain your dignity and offer the other person his or her dignity. It's a matter of respect and of responsibility. And while you ask for forgiveness with the right words, be sure you also ask the right questions. Not only about how the other has felt, but also about what you can do in order to make things better. You cannot heal the other person. Every person needs to heal by themselves. But you can ask, what is it that you can do in order to help? To prevent things from happening again? To help healing? To help the other feel better? What is it that you can do to help them feel understood and heard and seen and loved and appreciated and respected? Because asking these questions not only sends a positive message towards the other person, but also expresses the fact that you are willing to go the extra mile. You are willing to put in the effort. You are not just asking for forgiveness as a habit, as something meaningless. You are actually in the process, opening up, being vulnerable, being willing to put on effort, being willing to learn. And last but not least, asking for forgiveness is a matter of time. You might have to do it again. You might have to express the attitude, the regret, over and over for several times. Because while trying to forgive you, the person who is putting in that effort might meet resentment and anger and hurt again and again. It takes patience. And let the person know. Tell them that you are there and that you understand it takes time. Do not offer the apology as a one-time event. Offer it as an open-ended attitude. I am here for you, I apologize, and I will wait for as much as it takes until you are able to forgive me. It doesn't mean that you'll grovel all the time. It means that you understand it takes time. And it means that you are willing to wait, to offer the other person the space they need in order to heal, but also, at the same time, assuring them that you are open and willing to go into the process with them, and that you are understanding enough not to put pressure, not to expect to be forgiven, not to be, as Shakespeare put it, ready to forgive and forget. It takes time, but the good manners of forgiving mean that you are practicing to live on both sides of forgiveness.